In the previous session, we programmed a fairly basic arrangement down, but you'll have noticed obviously it's devoid of any sound effects. Now, the importance of sound effects shouldn't be underestimated since they can make a significant difference to any mix. In fact, they're so important that if you leave them out of a track, it can end up sounding unfulfilling or as though it's missing something. Now, the best approach with sound effects is just to collect everything you can from wherever you can. We've been collecting our sound effects now for a good number of years, and we have them from everything from sample CDs to sci-fi films, and even radio stations. And if you tune out a radio, you can sample the hiss, which we've then processed and affected just to create the general timbre that we needed. We also program in a range of outboard gear and on our plug-in instruments. It's basically when we've got a few minutes spare, we'll dive in, we'll play around, and we'll program a few sound effects. Now, to some, programming sound effects in a synthesizer, it brings them out in a cold sweat, but in reality, they're just so incredibly simple to make. So what we're going to do in this session is, since programming most effects is fairly straightforward and very quick, we're going to walk you through step by step how to program two of the most common sound effects. The first is going to be the typical trance boom, which is used to denote a breakdown and can be quite useful when writing trance music. And the second is going to be a small sweeping timbre that can be used as a build up or a build down in a general mix. What we'll do is we'll start by programming a sonic boom. Okay, we first start by creating a new track in Logic, which we can throw our instrument on. So I'll just create that here. It's a software instrument. And we'll just draw in a small MIDI track here. Just enlarge that a bit so you can see it a bit better. And we'll just change the cycle point so it continually cycles this part. And we do is we open the inspector and we'll call up Ultrabeat for this. Standard drum kit, as you can hear. The sound we're interested in is the kick drum, which is sat at C1. So what we'll do is we'll just draw in a quick note at C1. Just solo that out so you can hear it. Oops, move that forward a little bit. There we go. Oh, stretch that out. All we need to do is apply reverb to that, a very long reverb. So we'll use Space Designer. And let's have a look now. What we'll do is we'll go down for our large spaces and halls. And for quite a long one, and just let that load. There we go. Now what we need to do is need to the EQ to remove the top end of them frequencies, stop it ringing out across the mix. We only want the bottom boom end. And then what we'll do as well is we'll also call up this bottom end. And what we'll do is there we go, we'll place a boom. We'll place a boost at this bottom end, and by just changing the wet and the dry settings, we can adjust how much it booms by. If we want more of a crack on the front of it, we can just affect the dry, and that's basically it. That's how simple it is to create the sonic boom that you hear in most trance tracks. For this next effect, we're going to create just the typical sweeping sound, kind of a swoosh. These are quite typical to create and can be created on just about any subtractive synthesizer that features a noise waveform. So we need to start by just creating a track for a software instrument. And we'll call up an instrument. For this we'll use the ES2, I think, the ES2 synthesizer. Just a standard subtractive synthesizer, nothing special. It's got the 3 waveforms and a filter section. And we start by turning off oscillators 1 and 2. And then we turn oscillator 3 to a noise waveform. And what we do is we look at the modulation. We want to slow the LFOs down on this. There's a lot of LFOs running on this default preset. So we turn them all off or slow them down. And what we'll do is we'll just draw in a MIDI part here and put in a note. And just lengthen that out a little and I'll say that a little bit more. What I'll do is lengthen that over all 4. Just solo that down so you can actually hear what we're doing here. And pretty much straight away you can hear the effect there. All we need to do is just move a few parameters around, like slow the LFOs down. We can boost the cutoff just to give it more of a whoosh at the very beginning of it. And play around with the release, which will affect how it ends. We've got the decay to make more of a sharper pluck to it as it starts to decrease. We're just playing around basically with the parameters just to create a timbre that we think would suit any particular mix. And that's how we do it basically. It's not incredibly complicated or convoluted. You do it basically with a standard subtractive synthesizer, which we're using here. Use the envelopes here, and you can use the modulation and the filters just to create the timbre. As long as you're on a noise waveform, that's all that matters. And then you just play around the parameters, and you will eventually come up with a timbre that's suitable for a sound effect.